everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sweary Teacher podcast. Now, originally I was thinking about doing one of these a month, but it's now November, so it's the end of November. So it's been a while since the first episode, but yes, I'm hoping to get a whole bank of these for everybody to better listen to hopefully help one or two people in their quest for a better work-life balance in our schools. So today we are talking about some different ways to reach out, and obviously it's now nearly December, massively long term for everybody. So it's very difficult sometimes when we're in the thick of it and when we're on that hamster wheel, when we're just constantly going round and round and round. It's very difficult in order to actually step back from the situation and really consider how we can actually talk to people about how we're feeling, because I'm getting an awful lot of messages from people who are at the end of their tether, who are burnt out, who feel their managers are not listening to them. So there's all sorts of issues in our schools at the moment, and of course head teachers and leaders have got their own issues, haven't they? So sometimes it might not be that they are uncaring towards their colleagues and people that are working within their schools, but it might be that they can't see the wood for the trees in their own lives and are really struggling themselves. So there are an awful lot of factors. Of course, it might just be that they're not very nice, power hungry people. So that's the other way of looking at it, isn't it? So you can decide what end of the spectrum that your school leaders are, and how caring they are, etc. And that will help you to consider how to approach the situation. So I've got 5 top tips for you in order to support speaking out about your mental health in schools. So a caveat to this is that I've also had difficulties in the past speaking out about my mental health, and we'll go through, we'll have a think about those, and I'll add my spin on them. So first of all is catching it before it becomes an issue. So just make a note of your behaviours and think about what your triggers, what stresses you, how you deal with things. And when you are getting close to getting extra stressy, just consider how you work really, and just note down those things that you know that you do when you are getting incredibly stressed. Because if you manage to catch it yourself, then you can hopefully take a step back before it gets too late. And I noticed in terms of when we sort of take time off for stress, we always wait until we are completely stressed and completely burnt out, and we should have done it a long time sooner. So for example, if you have like one day off in a term just to recoup your mental health, that is up to you, and that is absolutely fine. And if it saves you having 3 weeks off in sort of a term's time, then that's going to be beneficial for everyone. So never feel guilty about having a mental health day. It is a sick day like any other day, so just consider that. So catch it before it becomes an issue if you can. And similarly, you can ask friends to consider your signs of burnout and do the same for them. So because other people can spot it quicker than you can. I've got a friend of mine who says that I've got this kind of twitchy kind of tell when, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to see my twitch, but apparently I sort of twitch when I'm getting a bit stressed, and he can tell when I'm getting a bit stressed. But I wonder if you've got these behaviours at school. I normally have some sort of sense of human malfunction at some point before it all goes horribly wrong. So just think about what your tells are, what your colleagues' tells are, and actually get into the habit of checking in with each other if people seem extra stressed than usual. It's a stressful job, isn't it? And we can't take those stresses away. But if we have channels to deal with those stresses in good ways, so for example, if children, particular characters, are stressing you out in your classroom, is there someone you can offload to that you can have an objective conversation about of methods of moving things forward? And sometimes we do need to just rant and sound off a little bit, and that is absolutely fine. Do you have avenues in which you can do that? So check in on your friends and colleagues for signs of burnout and get them to do the same for you, and also check in with people at home, because hopefully they will be able to tell as well if you're getting a little bit twitchy, if you are swapping nights out for nights in marking because you're so far behind, for example. These are all tales, aren't they, that things are not going well. And I remember one particular job I had with it was my son's second birthday party, and I spent more time thinking about the lesson observation on Monday than I did thinking about his birthday. And at that point, I thought things have got to change because it's not right. It's not. I'm not having fun, and it's a lot, isn't it? And if you can't even concentrate on your own children's birthday parties because you're so stressed about work, then something's got to give, and it's not your family. So that's also worth considering as well, isn't it? Which leads me on to number 3. Stop masking. So it's really easy to pretend we are okay. And I've employed my thick skin many, many times at school. So I've sat and cried in classrooms of trusted colleagues, but I have very rarely taken my mask off. And also, it's just thinking about where it's okay to do that and where it isn't, because quite often in one particular school I worked in, I had a big cupboard, spent a lot of time in it, to be honest. I wasn't at that school very long, about 2 terms, but yeah, I had 30 children in the class. 10 of those children had additional needs. Some of them were quite high needs. My HLSA was always taken to cover lessons. I was expected to do X, Y, and Z, and SLT were not very supportive in terms of supporting sort of behaviours in the class, etc. So there was no one to turn to. It was me against everybody. And yeah, spent a lot of time crying in my classroom in that job in the cupboard. Some of us don't have the luxury of walk-in cupboards, and of course, so toilets will do if you can find a secluded one. But it shouldn't have to be like that. Obviously, work situations, everybody has the occasional need to have a little cry somewhere, but it should not be the norm. So just consider if that is the case for you. Consider which colleagues are trusted colleagues, and then you can let your mask off a little bit. I remember people asking me, how's it going? I'll be like, living the dream, meaning it's rubbish for everybody, isn't it? So yeah, particular schools can be particularly challenging in terms of work-life balance and well-being. And again, it's the environment that is set from the top down, isn't it? So if you are in one of those environments that the top does not send very clear well-being messages, is not helpful in terms of individuals' well-being, then I think it's time to consider your place in the school. Again, seeking support from outside school is really important as well. So friends and family from your actual life, it's really important that you include them as well. Do not isolate yourself as far as possible, because it's very easy, isn't it, when you get stressed because you've got so much to do, is just get your head down and get through it at the detriment of your social life. But actually, having hobbies and having a life and looking out for your family outside of school is so much more important than your job, because ultimately it's just a job. And I don't think that when I was a young teacher, I really quite got this, because apart from my husband and partner before that, I mean, really, my job was the most important thing to me. And I think it wasn't until my children came along that I realised it was just a job. And now I'm a little bit older, and I've been teaching 24 years now, and my work-life balance has improved a lot, because I'm in a lucky situation. Because I went freelance, I do 1 day a week Senkoing in schools, and the rest is on my freelance work. So taking a step back from that, I can see that I don't want to go back in the classroom, because actually it takes a lot out of me. And yeah, I think with all the government expectations, I don't enjoy it as much as I used to. But I love Senkoing, so I've found my niche within school, definitely. And that's a job that I love, and I've managed to carve out sort of a work-life balance that suits me perfectly. And again, I understand that for many of our colleagues, being in that position is kind of a distant thing, because as a young person, when you're trying to pay for the mortgage, when you're trying to start a family, when you're trying to make ends meet in the current climate, then the job is really important to you financially as well. So it can be a little bit of a challenge, even when you've taken that step back and looked at it objectively and thinking, well, I do need to cut down, perhaps I could go part-time. It is a massive consideration, isn't it, if you are also thinking about finances too. So I'm with you there. I've been in that situation myself. So positive self-talk, that's another one. So talk to yourself like you would your best friend. What would you tell your best friend to do in the situation? Would you just tell them to suck it up and get on with it? I don't think you would. So your best friend hopefully would listen to you empathetically and would suggest some things moving forward, and would probably say something like, I don't know why you're putting up with that, I think you need to go and speak to somebody about it. So it's really important that you take your internal best friend's advice and start treating yourself a little bit better, because we put up with so much in education. And I'm pretty sure that if we became about 10% less agreeable as a workforce, then things would really, really need to change. So just be brave and start to speak out about these difficulties. So it may be that you can consider as a whole staff together what might need to be supported. It might be that you can have a wellbeing staff meeting, for example, when leaders are actually actively listening to the concerns of the whole staff. Now, this is a really positive thing if that's the case. I would add a caveat on that, where leaders need to listen to it objectively and not get really defensive about stuff, and actually be committed to making a positive change, because so often we sit in staff meetings, don't we, and we're like, oh yeah, this needs to change, this needs to change, perhaps we could do some work here, and leaders take it away and then just do their own thing anyway. So we've all wasted an hour of our time, and nothing has changed for the better. But if your school are actually committed to making life better for the workforce within it, then actually they will be able to objectively listen to your concerns, and whether individually or collectively, and you can actually move forward as a staff together. That's a really, really positive thing. I'm not sure whether your school also has something like a wellbeing questionnaire that they can get support with, so that you can actually fill it in and have your views put across. These are always anonymous, although, if you are the only man in a certain age demographic, then no doubt you're going to be a little bit easier to identify on your answers. So that's also another consideration, isn't it, when you're filling in those questionnaires. But again, that's another way that you can speak out about your mental health and actually get some ideas across about what's not going well within the school and what needs to change. And of course, it's not just school that causes an issue, is it? Because actually, even if things are going really well at school, and it's the things in other areas of your life that are not going well, then that can be a bit of a challenge, because if stuff's going on at school, that's great. It's going well, and then suddenly a curveball hits you. And I think for me, from one school I worked in, everything was going brilliantly until I had some fertility issues, and then my life kind of caved in around me, if you like. So again, depending on what external factors, your job needs to have some wriggle room so that you can have some ideas about how you can support yourself in school with these external factors, because you can't be expected to go in and just pretend like everything's fine if you've got some major issues at home. We have relationships, we break up with people, we have health issues, we have more health issues because we're in a stressful job anyway. So we can't just pretend that nothing has happened, and we do need an awful lot of care and understanding from our schools and our school leaders. And if we were looked after well as a staff, that would mean that we'd be much more able to look after the young people a lot better, I think, overall. So that's also a consideration, because even if your school and your job is going brilliantly, sometimes it's just that extra thing that might send you over the edge from outside of school. And again, you need to have someone to speak to that's going to be kind and compassionate, and don't be ashamed. If you need to take a day off for your mental health, take 1 or 2 days off for that. That is completely the legitimate thing to do. And if it saves you having 3 or 4 weeks off down the line, then that is a bonus. Because we all know, unlike other jobs, I guess in some ways, if a supply teacher comes into your classroom and teaches while you're off, we know that for a day or two, then that's going to be better than them coming in for a month and messing everything up, because that's also another consideration, isn't it? So if you're off, then of course somebody else will be teaching your class, possibly badly, and then you've kind of got more effort when you get back to sort it all out. Again, it shouldn't be like that, but of course that is the reality, isn't it, of people coming and teaching your class, and you have to kind of mop it up afterwards. However, that at least the teaching is done, even though the assessment might not be. So that's a bonus. If you're in another area of the school, such as a school leader, Senko, etc., then appreciate if you take a month off, then there's going to be a massive pile of stuff for you when you get back. So unfortunately, that is the reality of the job. And although we'd hope that somebody would pick up slack, there is no one to pick up the slack in our schools at the moment, is there? So that is another consideration. So again, going back to that prevention being better than cure, definitely a much better idea for you to have a couple of days off, earlier on in the term rather than a month off later. So just a few things for you to think about. So ultimately then, just really putting yourself first, not being ashamed to take the odd day off your mental health, speaking to your school, speaking to trusted people in school, making sure friends and family and colleagues are considering what tells that you have when your mental health is getting a little bit wobbly, and also you looking out for other people and being willing and able to have those tricky conversations with school leaders about your mental health, or as a staff having that conversation about how things can be improved for you. So all things that will hopefully make your life better in school. And the bottom line is there are hard choices, aren't there? There is always a choice. Even sometimes people say, oh, I didn't have a choice. There is always a choice. It just might mean that there's two bad choices and neither one is looking great. One might sort out short-term issues and cause problems long-term, such as money, and and the other one might make you burn out quicker. So there's always choices, but you might need to take a step back and just consider where your future lies and what your priorities are, and you just need to put yourself and your family and your health first in making these tricky decisions. But hopefully, if your school listens, if they're compassionate care in school for well-being, or they're developing those skills in school, then hopefully by speaking out, then you will get all the support you need, and then you will be able to do your job safe in the fact that you know that someone has got your back and you're being looked out for as a person, because it's not a weakness to have these issues. It's very, it's impossible to go through your life without having any mental health issues at all. It happens to all of us. And I think the older we get, the more baggage we accumulate on the way from various things. So, everybody's going to need help at some point, and just make sure that you, at that point, you have those skills and those people around you in order to seek support where you can. So thank you for listening, and we'll be back next month with more wellbeing.